I have a little bit of a confession to make. I absolutely love being a software developer. Now, I know that will not come as a shock to a lot of you who have been around this channel for a while, but if you're new here, maybe that will be. I love what I get to do every day. I think one of the main reasons that I love software development is that I get to solve my own problems. So today I want to talk to you about a problem that I recently had and how I was able to solve it by building out a CLI in Java and more specifically in Spring. All right, so let's talk about the problem first. As a content developer, I have to track all the different pieces of content that I'm working on for my job. Last year, this was a very manual process for me. I would go into a spreadsheet, and for each of the videos I would create, I would enter the title, the description, the platform I posted it on, the number of views I got, a link to it, all of the details about a video. There are a bunch of problems with this, right? One, it's a very manual process and it's going to take time. Two, it doesn't scale very well. And three, even though I was entering the details for a video at that specific time, the views for that video will update over time and I'm not updating those. So I'm not collecting accurate data by the end of the year. So this is the problem that I was having. And I decided that I wanted to sit down and write a solution for this. All right, so we know what the problem is. Let's talk about some options for building a solution to this. Now, this isn't something I would need out on the web somewhere that other people can get access to. This is something I would run on my local computer. Again, still once a month. Yeah, I could try to tie it directly into the spreadsheet, but running this kind of report once a month was not a big deal for me. If I could just copy this data in, paste it in, again, once a month, I'd probably have to do it 12 times. So that's a pretty good start. So I don't need an API somewhere. This screams to me like a perfect scenario where I would build just a CLI for my local computer. So if you're going to build a CLI, what are your options? Well, you could start with Bash. I'm on a Mac OS, so I could use Bash as a solution. But to be honest, I don't remember a lot of Bash and I don't use it every day. So if I was going to write a CLI application that talked to the YouTube API, for example, that would be a lot of work for me and a lot of Googling / chat GPT. Is that a verb yet? So that would take a lot of work for me to get that to work because it's not something I use every day. So we could take a look at Java. I'm familiar with Java. I can use it every day. But where would I start with Java? So you could start from scratch and just create a command line application, a console application that took an input and did a whole bunch of things, right? But again, for me, that's really starting from scratch. That would be a lot of boilerplate code that you'd have to write. So in Java, you could reach for some tool that helps you create a command line application. There's a really good project out there called Pico CLI, which would help with that. Again, not something I'm familiar with. I am familiar with Spring and the programming paradigm in Spring that helps me kind of focus on what I'm trying to do, which is build a CLI app and not kind of the infrastructure stuff, right? So there's a great project out there called Spring Shell. I will go ahead and leave a video here and in the description below. I did an introduction to Spring Shell and how it might be useful to use. So if you want to take a look at that. But what we're going to do is use Spring Shell today to connect to the YouTube API and pull down that data for a particular video. This will be useful for you if you want to grab data from your YouTube channel or just a public search for that matter. So we'll start off by looking at the YouTube API, which, if I'm being frank, wasn't all that helpful. Like, you really need to dig through the docs to understand which API to even use. So we'll start there. We'll take a look at the API, which APIs we might want to use. We'll talk about how to grab some API keys so that you can do this yourself. And then we'll create a project from scratch. So we'll create a new Spring Boot project that will use Spring Shell. We'll build out an entire CLI app that can connect to the YouTube API and pull down information about videos. So even if you are not in the market for something that talks directly to the YouTube API to get data for you, this might be a useful walkthrough to understand, like, how do I build a CLI app? How do I interface with an API? Maybe your API is something different, but this will still kind of give you that context. So I'm pretty excited about today. This is a project that I've been working on for a little while now, and I'm excited to finally kind of share this with you. So what are we waiting for? Let's create some code. We are going to start this project like we do every Spring project by heading over to start.spring.io. I'm going to choose Maven as my build tool, Java as my programming language, and the latest version of Spring Boot, which at the time of this recording is 3.0.6. We're going to fill in some metadata. So I'm going to say dev.danvega. The artifact will be YouTube CLI, and we'll choose packaging of jar and Java 17. We're just going to need a few dependencies here. The first one will be Spring Shell. The next one will be Spring Reactive Web. We're bringing in Webflux because we are going to take advantage of Spring Framework 6's HTTP interfaces to communicate with an API, which is built on the web client, which is why we are bringing in that. Finally, we're going to need the Spring Configuration Processor, and that should be everything. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click Generate. That will download a zip for you. You can go ahead and open that up in whatever IDE or text editor you're most productive in. For me, that's going to be IntelliJ Ultimate Edition. So what are we waiting for? Let's write some code. All right, I'm going to get started and rename this to application. I just like it like that, and we'll say okay. And the first thing that we need to create is a new class in a command package, and we're going to call this YouTube stats command. So again, if you're new to Spring Shell, I'll leave a link to a video I did on an introduction to Spring Shell. This is basically the start of that. We need to create some commands. Like when you go ahead and run this from the command line, how can you interact with this application? And we do that by starting with the @shell component annotation. And this will just tell us to go ahead and look for shell methods. So we're going to create a few in here, just kind of stub these out. They're not going to really do anything just yet. So we start with the @shell method annotation, and we need to give it a key and a description. A key is basically the command that the user will run to run this command. So I'm going to start off with one called recent, and we'll give it a value. The value is just the description, and it also shows up in the help text, so it's very informative to the user who's running it. So let's just say list recent videos by max count. Okay, that's a good start. And what we'll do is we'll just say public void recent. This will take some arguments later, but let's just leave it at that for now. So now we can go ahead and copy and paste this a few times. Let's go ahead and add some more. Actually, I'm just going to add 3 for now. Maybe we can add one more later, but I'm going to do recent. I'm going to do filter by year. So this is, let's list videos by year. So this will take in a option. So let's just say there's a shell option for this. So the option is going to have a default value of, let's just say 2023 for now. We can change that a little bit later to be maybe more dynamic. And we'll say that this is going to be an integer, and we'll call this year. So once we have the year, then we can pass that to whatever service is going to filter by year. This is going to be probably, why is this complaining recent? Oh, that's why. This would be, so we might have a, let's just do this now while I'm here. So we might have a shell option for this. And the shell option for this might have a default value of, say, 5. So this would be the integer max. So in this one, I might say, hey, give me the last 5 videos. But in this one, I might filter by year because I might want to say, give me all of the videos that I've worked on for this particular year. In this case, the current year is 2023. So give me all of those videos. This is what I would usually use for a report. So this is my content report. So let's call this one the report. And let's just say that this is going to be run a report based on all of the videos for the current year, right? So this might reach out to whatever this one does, but this report is a little bit different. So in one instance, I might want to just output all the videos I've worked on this year. In another instance, in the report, I might want to output all of the videos I worked on this year in a specific format with a lot more information, whereas this might just show me the title, the date, and the number of views it had. So I think this is a pretty good start. Again, this is going to be very different for whatever you're trying to do with it, but I think this is a good start. So if we have this in place and this is right, we should be able to run our application now. And if the shell is correct, so we can go ahead and type help and we get some information here. So here are the built-in commands. Here are the commands that we made. So we have three reports or three commands that we can run underneath there. So if we just say recent, that works. Filter by year and then report, right? So all those work, foo does not. So cool. So we've got the start of this. Now that we have the commands that we're going to run, I think the very first thing that we need to do is figure out on the YouTube side, what exactly are we going to call? Because again, I mentioned there's a whole bunch of different APIs in the YouTube data API and not a whole lot of direction as to which one you should use. So I'm going to show you the ones that I'm going to interact with and how we can use them. And then we'll come back to the code and worry about how we're going to call said API. So let's take a look at the YouTube docs and head over there. All right, so this is a really good place to get started over on developers.google.com. You can check out the YouTube data API overview, and it gives you a quick before you start. So you need a Google account. You need to create a project on the Google Developers Council and obtain authorization credentials. So there's some information on how to get those. The quick summary of this is that you'll want to go into your credentials and you'll want to go create a new API key, not an OAuth 2 client ID, because we're not going to be collecting other people's information. This is just for us, so I just need an API key. So once you have an API key, you can go over to resources, application.properties, and enter these two properties. Now we're gonna create a configuration class in a little bit to do this, to handle this, but these are the two properties that you will want to set. So from there, you can see that you can visit the enabled APIs and make sure that it's on for YouTube Data API version 3. And then there's some just information about it. I would take a little time and go through here. It's important to understand. Once you've done that, you can go over to the reference tab, and this is where all of the APIs are. And again, there's no guide here that at least that I found to like say, hey, if you're looking for this type of data, this is where you want to go. And so I had to spend a lot of time kind of sifting through here and finding which APIs would give me the data that I needed. So I landed on search, and if you go to search and list, this will tell you that it's going to return a collection of search results that match the query parameters specified in the request. And here are the things that common use cases that you can use it for. So I may want to list by keyword. In this case, I want my videos. So you can put in like a channel ID. That's what we'll end up doing. And so you can make a request to this. Here are all the different parameters. The parts are similar between all of these APIs. Like what parts do you want to get out of this? Because you may only need certain things. For this one, you may say, I want a snippet. Now, what I like here is if you scroll all the way down and kind of dig through these, you'll see what a response is. So here's a response that you would get back for a search. And you'll notice that for the items, there's a search resource, and that'll kind of tell you what is going to come back from that. And each video inside of there, you can get information about the video. Now, the video has just a little bit of information about it, like the title, description, thumbnails, etc. but it doesn't have all of the details for a video. Like I want more information, like date it was published, maybe it was updated, how many views it had, all of that, those metrics that you might want about an individual video, you're not going to get from the search. This is going to be through another call called the videos. And so this is going to list out the videos, but you can do this by video ID. So for all of the videos, you will need to kind of iterate through there, make another call to this API to get the details for a video like this. And then you'll see when you get that back, the details that you can get in here there's a whole lot more details in here. So that is the combination of what I'm going to do. I'm going to search, and I'm also going to get video details using this API call. So that's the gist of it. Now I'm going to cut down some of this video because I think this would be like a very long video if we wrote all of this code together. But based on those calls, I know what the response is going to look like. So we can see that this search response here has things like next, previous, page info, and items. I'm going to create records to kind of match all of the responses that I would expect to get back and all of the embedded responses. So items is a collection of video resource. So I'm going to create records for that. So we're going to do that first. I'm just going to kind of paste some code in. We'll take a look at that, and that will kind of kickstart us into making a call over to this API. So let's head back to IntelliJ and do that. All right, so I pasted in these models. Again, they're just modeling the JSON data that comes back from the API. And some of which I'm going to use in the report. But we have things like search list response. It's just a record. Here are all those different things that we saw in the response, things like page info, and then the items is an array. Here we're using a list of search results. The search result has things like the video ID, which we need. Once we have a video ID, we can say, hey, give me information about the video. And the video list response will bring back something like this with a list of video items. The video items has an ID, a snippet, and a statistics. The statistics are the things that we care about with things like view count, like count, favorite count, etc. So again, these are all just some simple records that we're going to use in our application. Now to contact the API, to make a request to the API, we're using Spring Boot 3, Spring Framework 6's HTTP interfaces. So I'm going to create a new Java class. I'm going to call this the YouTube Data Client. And again, this is going to be an interface. This is going to be marked with, actually, I don't need to mark this with anything. I am going to paste some code in here, though, so that we can take a look at it. Let's see here. And these are 3 separate calls that we'll end up using, probably just the first 2 for now, and then we'll take a look at this one. But so the search one, we're saying the get exchange is whatever the base URL is. So the base URL is, we'll set that up in when we create an instance of this client. So again, this is an interface. If you're new to this, I've talked about this in the past, but instead of doing the low-level kind of plumbing and configuration of using something like a REST template or a web client, we can just create this interface and Spring will turn it into an implementation at runtime. So we're going to call the YouTube Data API /search and then all of these parameters. Now, again, the best way to do this is to go back to the the reference explorer that we looked at. You can fill in these parameters right there in the documentation and run an example with your API key to see exactly what the data is that's coming back. But after a whole bunch of fiddling with that, this is what I came down to. This is what I need. So when we search, we're going to ask for the channel ID. Let's just back up here. So yeah, the channel ID, the key, the max results, and page token, which we'll talk about. Then when we need all of the data about a specific video, we just need the video ID and then that API key. All right. So that is our YouTube data client. Now we need to make this work, right? We need to basically wire this up. So to do so, I'm going to create a new Java class. We're going to call this client config, and we'll put this in a config package. So client config. So this is going to be an at configuration class. And I'm just going to say proxy beans methods equals false, because at the end of the day, later on, we don't need to worry about this now, but we will be creating a native image of this. And this is one thing that you can do to ensure that we're not using any reflection here. So I actually did a video on this too. If you're not sure what proxy bean methods is and why we might want to set this to false, I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description to that video. And again, just to cut down on some coding here, we'll take a look at this. We're going to create a couple of beans here. We create this HTTP service proxy factory, which uses the web client underneath the hood. Here is the base URL. So everything in the YouTube client that we have, like /search, is appended to this base URL. We create a HTTP service proxy factory, and then we can create a YouTube data client from that factory. So all this is doing is kind of the plumbing to say, hey, when we need a YouTube data client, now we have a bean of this type. We can just ask for it in our controller or service, wherever we need it. We can ask for this YouTube data client and then make a call to something like /search, and we'll get back a search list response. And again, this is one of those records that I've created. So cool. So I think we have some plumbing in place to kind of get this going. So let's take a look at where we might start this chain of command to end up calling the YouTube API. All right, so I'm going to create a new Java class. We'll place it in a service package, and I'm going to call this the video service. So once we have this in place, let's go ahead and annotate this with @service so we get picked up here and included in the Spring's application context. So I'm going to create a few things here. I'm going to create a logger. So I have this IntelliJ Live template to do this for me. So I get a nice log here. And I'm also going to create a list of videos. So that's one of the records that I created earlier. And this is going to be called videos, and this is going to be a new array list. So that is basically going to hold all of our videos, and then we can kind of do some filtering, paging, sorting, whatever on that. So I also want an instance of the YouTube data client. So we now have that. I'm going to call that client. So we're going to get that through constructor injection, because that is a bean that is created for us. And I also need some properties. I need a YouTube config props, and we'll call this YouTube config. And we haven't created this yet. And this is going to be for that secret key and for the channel ID. And we're going to use this in a lot of different places. So again, we're going to want to set these there, but we want like a configuration class to hold channel ID and key. So I'm going to do that by heading over to the config package, and we'll go in, create a new Java class. We'll call this YouTube config props. And again, this is going to be a record. We'll mark this with @configuration properties. There it is. And we'll have a prefix of YouTube. So this is, again, just going to be those two fields. One's going to be channel ID, and one is going to be key. So with that in place, we'll need to head over to our application and just enable that. So enable configuration properties, and we'll enable that specific one. So we'll say YouTube config props.class, and everything should be happy. We'll get an instance of that through dependence, through constructor injection, and all is well. So the first thing that I need to do is make a call to our YouTube data client and get a list of all of the videos that we might want to work with. So this is where some decisions really had to come into place. I could call an endpoint that basically loaded every video on my channel into this collection, or I could slim that down a bit. Now, I have a lot of videos on my channel, and not, certainly people have more, but I have enough to where I don't want to load all of them at once. So all I really care about is loading this year's videos, because again, the whole purpose of this for me was to run reports on this year's data. So I'm going to say this dot load all videos this year. And we need to pass in a couple things. We'll talk about what this is. We need a local date, which is going to be now, and we'll just get the year from this. So we'll talk about this in a second, but this is going to be a method that we're going to create here. And I'm just going to paste this in again to save some time here. So load all videos this year is going to take in a page token. Now a page token is basically a way to say which page are we on, because we have a max results of 50 through the YouTube API. So I can only get 50 at a time. So what I'm doing is the initial call in the constructor, I'm saying there is no page token, give me the first 50. The local date.now.get year is saying, hey, here's the year that I want to load these videos for. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that client that we created, and we're going to use the search by published after. So it's going to pass in our YouTube config, our channel ID, and our key. Those are required to make this call. The max results is 50, the page token, and then the published after is one of those search criteria that you can pass into this. So I'm creating this string based on the year. So it's going to be like 2023, 1/1 after that. So that's the searched after. So if we look at the YouTube client, okay, I just noticed that I wanted this in a client package. So let's just refactor that. Not a big deal. But again, here's the search publish after. Again, this will get turned into an actual implementation at runtime. So what's going to happen is we are going to get all of those back. Then remember I said we need more information about each of those videos. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that into a stream. We're going to filter them, make sure we're getting back just the videos, because some of the results in this may not be a video. It could be like a playlist or a short, I don't know, some other content types come back in this. So I remember having to say, give me just these. Then we're going to map results to the call of client.getVideo. So now we're getting details for a particular video. And that is, again, going to need the YouTube config key, the secret key, to get that. Then we're going to map that to a video list response for the items. And then for each, we're going to add all. So we're basically adding every one of those videos to this collection here. So recursively, if the search.next page token does not equal null and search.next page token is empty, we're going to recursively call this with the next page token. So that page token we get passed into here, and then it knows how to say, okay, I've already gotten the first 50. Now give me 50 through 100. Now give me 100 through 150, right? So that's how that's working. This should be load all videos this year. And this is this year, right? So that will call that cannot resolve symbol video list response. Video list response. Did we not pull that in correctly? So let's just say, hey, you should look for that. Not sure why, but all right, so that will fix that. So now when we create this video service, we are saying, here's the client, here's the config. Before we do anything with the YouTube, with the CLI application, I got to load all the videos. So I'm basically loading all the videos in the background here. And then when you run a command like recent, give me the last 5, we'll filter on this particular collection to get the last 5. This was kind of the best approach that I found. I would love to hear from you and see if you have a better approach to this. So this is what we're going to do. So now we need to basically call the video service from our YouTube stats command. All right, so to call it from our YouTube stats command, I'm going to need an instance of it. So I'll say private final video service. Video service. We'll get that through constructor injection. And then here I can say video service dot, and I want to do something like find recent videos, and then we'll go ahead and pass in the max. So I need a method in there. So let's create a find recent. And all the find recent method is going to do is take that collection, stream it. We'll get a limit of whatever the max is, and then we can turn that into a list. So that will return to us a list of videos. So then we can say return that, right? So that looks pretty good. So that's going to give us what we want. So we can turn that into a variable called recent. Let's call it videos. And then I can do a little with the Spring Shell project to basically build out a builder and print these out to a table. So I have this command service utility that is basically going to return a table builder. This is, again, some of the plumbing to like create a table builder here. So I'm going to create a new Java class, and we'll call this command service. It's just kind of like a helper class. This is going to be at service, and we're just going to have one method in here to, just so we don't repeat ourselves, we may use this in other places. This is going to return a table builder, and it's going to take in a list of videos and return a table builder for us. All right, and we'll say private final command service, and we'll get that through constructor injection as well. And now we should have everything we need to run our first command. So let's see if, well, actually, if you didn't do this yet, I'm going to do this now off screen, but you should go ahead and make sure you have your channel ID and your YouTube key installed here. All right, and so with that in place, we're going to go ahead and try and run our application. And with that in place, we should, we are getting an error. Nope, we're back here. So we should be able to run the recent command, and it's cool. We were able to do that. So we got the ID of the video, the title. So here's the title of the video. Here's the date it was published, and here is how many views that video has. Cool, so we are off to a great start here. We're able to get the recent videos. We're able to pass in a default value of how many we want to get back. This is a really good start. Now we can start to filter by year. We can write a report. We can go ahead and add some more to this to kind of finish off this tutorial. So let's do that now. All right, so the next command that we're going to work on is the by year command. So we're going to filter by year. So I'm going to use the video service, and I'm going to call find all by year, and then we'll go ahead and pass in the year argument. Of course, I do not have this created yet, so let's go ahead and create this. So same as above, we are going to, we're actually going to return a list of videos. So let's say a list of videos. And then we are going to return whatever's in the videos collection. We're going to turn that into a stream so that we can filter on it. And we're going to say the snippet. So there's a part of the video, video.snippet. No. Oops, I forgot to turn this into a stream. So there is a snippet on there, and we can get the published at and get the year, and we want to make sure that that is equal to the year that is being passed in. And then we'll go ahead and turn that into a list. Why did that not say year? Get year, and then turn that into a list. So that should be all we need here. We're going to go ahead and say, let's call this videos. And then we'll do something similar that we did above, and we'll say use that command service to get a table builder, and let's go ahead and render something out to the console. So let's go ahead and try to run this. Again, we'll say help here, and we have a filter by year. So that is going to print out all of the videos that I've done this year, along with some data about them. So cool. So far, so good. The last one I want to look at is the report. So again, the whole idea behind this was that this output to the console is nice, but I need a very specific format for a report that I need to run, you know, at year's end, but typically I run this every couple of weeks or once a month. So we need a report to do this. So I'm going to create a new class that is going to help me with this called the report service. So I'm going to go down into service, create a new Java class, and we're going to call this report service. And this is going to be annotated with @service. And I'm going to copy in a method here. And what this is going to do is going to take a list of those videos. So in the case of this year, give me all the videos for this year. Let's pass it into this method. It is going to stream that, and then it's going to map each one into what I'm calling a team tab row. This is basically the report that we have to run. And so in my team tab, each row should look like this. It has a title, it has a type, it has the start date, the end date, where it was. So this is a virtual, confirmed, yes. Eyeballs live, I have 0. I'll come back to that in a second. The actual view count, the content. So I'm basically pasting in the YouTube URL. So if somebody wanted to go watch this video from this spreadsheet, you could. And then contact and notes. I don't have anything for that in here. Now the eyeballs live, unfortunately, even if it was a live video, I haven't found a good way to get the number of views while it was live. So if 100 people watched it live, but 1,000 people have watched the recording, the view count is always going to be 1,100, right? So if you know a way to do that, please let me know. But if not, I'm just mapping this to a team tab row, and then I'm turning that into a list. So for every video, give me something that looks like this, and then turn it into a list. So that's what we're going to get back in when we call this. So we haven't called this yet, so let's call this. So here I'm going to say video service dot find all by year. So I want to get the local date dot now dot get year. Nope, get year. So with the year, now I'll be able to say, here are all the videos. So let's say videos. So now those are all the videos. So now what I want to do is use that report service. So back up here, we are going to say private final report service. Again, we'll get this through constructor injection. And now we can use this down here to say report service dot videos to team tab rows. I want to pass in those videos that I just found. And what is that going to return? It's going to return a list of team tab rows. And let's go ahead and do that. And then for each of the rows in there, I can say for each, I actually have team tab row. I have a print method in there. So this is, if we look at this, I just have a way to kind of print this out in the format that I want it. So there's probably a better way you could do this, but this works for me for now. So now, if I go ahead and rerun this, let's see what this looks like. So help, we do have one for a report. So I'm going to say report, and then you could see I get all of the information that I'm looking for. So what is the title? What is it's a YouTube start and end date? How many views does it have? Where is that video? So now what I can do is just come in here and copy this. So I would just come in here and say, copy this. I could even write something in here to go ahead and add this to my clipboard if I wanted to. So I could go ahead and paste it in there. And now I have all the data that I need to input into the spreadsheet. So this is really great. If I wanted to run this in my IDE, this would work great, but I want to take this one step further. So we have almost everything we need here. What I want to do is turn this into a native executable. So now that anytime I'm on the command line, I can just run this from a terminal and get the information that I want. So let's do that. All right, so I've done a video on this already. I created a dad joke CLI, and in there we did some similar process. So I'm gonna kind of fly through some of this, but let's just walk through it. So to get this started, we need a specific version of an SDK here, the JDK. We're using GraalVM 17. So make sure you have that. So we have GraalVM 17. So to create a native executable, we're just going to come over to the terminal, and we're using Maven here. So we're going to say maven-p, which is going to allow us to switch to the native profile. And from the native profile, we can call compile. Now we also want to say, go ahead and skip the tests. So I'll do that, and then I'll go ahead and run this. So this is going to use GraalVM underneath the hood. In all of Spring Boot 3, Spring Framework 6's hard work to make all the projects compatible with this, we can now create a native executable. And this is a really great use case for this. I want something that is more lightweight, that is faster. When I'm on the command line, I don't want to wait for like things to boot up. I just want to instantly get that shell so that I can start typing commands and get access to the information that I want. So the trade-off here is obviously that this is native compilation is going to take a little bit of time, anywhere from 1 to 2 minutes, depending on the size of the app, at least for this type of size of the app. So we'll wait for this to complete, and when it's done, we'll talk more about it. All right, so we have a build success. You can see in the target folder, we have an executable. So if we look in target, there is that executable. We could go ahead and run that. But what I'm going to do is actually add a path to that in my application, in my system, so that I can run this right from my command line. All right, so I've created an alias to that in my ZSHRC file. So now on the command line, I can just type YouTube and it'll point to that native executable. And you see that it runs right away, brings me up into a shell, and I can do the same things. I can say help, and in mine, this one is a little bit different. I have a Tasha report, but similar thing. So now if I wanted to say filter by year, I can say, all right, go ahead and do that. And so it brings me to all of this, and here are all the videos that I created this year, a quick title, date, and number of views that it has. If I want to go ahead and run that Tasha report, I can, and you can see that I get all of my data exactly how I need it right from the command line. And then I could just come in, copy this, and paste it into my spreadsheet. Now, again, I could probably add something here to automatically add it to the clipboard when I run this command, which would probably be helpful. So maybe I'll do that as well. So just a really, I don't know if it's coming through, but just a really cool example for me of me being able to solve my own problems, and Spring Shell, Spring Boot 3, native executables, all kind of coming together to provide what I think is a really nice solution. All right, thank you for sticking around to the end of this tutorial. I hope you had a lot of fun building it. I know I did. And again, I stated this at the beginning of the tutorial. I love being a programmer. One of the main reasons is being able to solve my own problems. And this was a problem that I had that I don't know how I would have solved this if I wasn't a programmer. I might have asked somebody to help me. I might have found some no-code solution. But I just love every time I come across something like, I really don't want to do this again. My software development hat starts blinking and it says, hey, we can solve this. We know how to solve this. So it's a lot of fun being able to solve your own problems, and I hope you had some fun walking through this with me. If you did, as always, friends, please do me a big favor. Leave me those thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, happy coding.